Close your eyes for a moment. It's the year 60 AD, in the eastern lands of Roman-occupied Britain. A woman stands at the front of an army, not behind it, not watching from a hill. At the front, spear in hand, red hair loose in the wind, her daughters beside her. Behind her, 100,000 warriors who have been pushed past the point of endurance, who have had everything taken from them, and who are now ready to burn the world down to take it back. In front of her, Rome, the most powerful military empire the ancient world had ever produced. This is the story of Boudicca, the warrior queen who made Rome tremble, who burned 3 cities to ash, and who came closer than anyone in history to driving the Roman Empire from Britain entirely. Get comfortable. This one stays with you. Chapter 1. The Kingdom of the Iceni. The Iceni were a Celtic tribe who lived in what is now the county of Norfolk in eastern England. When Rome conquered much of Britain in 43 AD, the Iceni made a calculated choice. They cooperated. Their king, Prasutagus, negotiated a client-king arrangement with Rome, meaning the Iceni could keep their lands, their customs, their weapons, and their way of life, in exchange for acknowledging Roman authority and paying taxes. It was a compromise, an uncomfortable one, but it worked. Prasutagus ruled for nearly 2 decades under this arrangement. He was pragmatic, respected, and managed to keep his people largely protected from the worst of Roman occupation. He married a woman named Boudicca, described by Roman historians as tall, fierce-eyed, with a mass of red hair that fell to her hips and a voice that could silence a crowd without effort. The Romans who wrote about her were clearly unnerved by her, even in retrospect. When Prasutagus died, he left a will. It was a careful document. He divided his kingdom between his 2 daughters and the Roman Emperor Nero, hoping that by including Rome in the inheritance, he could protect his family and his people from what happened to kingdoms that simply resisted. It was a reasonable plan. Rome ignored it entirely. Chapter 2. What Rome did. The moment Prasutagus died, Roman officials moved in. They declared the entire Iceni kingdom annexed, simply absorbed into Roman territory, as if the client-king arrangement had never existed. Roman soldiers marched into Iceni lands and began seizing property. Nobles were stripped of their estates. Livestock was taken. Homes were ransacked. And then Rome did something that guaranteed it would face a war. Boudicca protested the seizure of her lands. The Roman procurator, the official in charge of the province's finances, had her publicly flogged, beaten like a common criminal, in front of her people, in front of her daughters, and then her daughters were assaulted by Roman soldiers. What Rome had calculated as a demonstration of power, a show of force to remind the Iceni who was in charge, became the single most catastrophic miscalculation in the history of Roman Britain. Because Boudicca did not collapse. She got up, and she started talking to her neighbors. Chapter 3. The Army Gathers. The Iceni were not the only tribe who had suffered under Roman rule. The neighboring Trinovantes had their own grievances, their lands seized, their sacred sites desecrated, their young men conscripted into Roman labor gangs to build temples to a Roman emperor they had never chosen to worship. When Boudicca's messengers arrived, the Trinovantes listened. Then they joined. Then other tribes, whose names the Roman historians didn't bother to record carefully, also went. Within months, Boudicca had assembled an army that Roman sources estimated at anywhere between 80,000 and 200,000 warriors. Modern historians debate the exact numbers, but all sources agree on one thing. It was enormous. larger than anything Rome had faced in Britain. Boudicca addressed them from a chariot, her daughters beside her, her red hair loose. Roman historian Cassius Dio, writing later, described her speaking in a voice that needed no amplification, carrying across the assembled thousands without effort. She spoke about what had been taken, about the flogging, about her daughters, about what Rome had done to every tribe in Britain, one compromise at a time, until there was nothing left to compromise. She asked them if they were willing to live as slaves. The answer was no. The army moved. Chapter 4. Camulodunum burns. Copy. The first target was Camulodunum, modern-day Colchester. It was the oldest Roman settlement in Britain, the symbolic capital of Roman authority in the province, and home to a massive temple dedicated to the Emperor Claudius, built on land seized from the Trinovantes, using Trinivante forced labor as a permanent monument to Roman dominance. There was a small Roman garrison. They sent for help, but the governor of Britain, Gaius Suetonius Paulinus, was on the other side of the island, conducting a military campaign in Wales. Reinforcements were promised but slow to arrive. Boudicca's army didn't wait. The city fell in 2 days. Every building was burned. The temple, that hated symbol of Roman conquest, was besieged for 2 days after the city fell, the remaining Romans making a last stand inside its walls. Then that too was torn down. A Roman relief force of around 2,000 soldiers marching to help arrived too late and was ambushed and destroyed almost entirely. Camulodunum was gone, reduced to ash and rubble, and Boudicca turned her army toward London. Chapter 5. Londinium and Verulamium. Copy. By the time Boudicca's army reached Londinium, modern London, the governor Suetonius had arrived in the city with a cavalry escort. He looked at what was coming toward him. He looked at the defenders available. And he made a cold, ruthless military calculation. London could not be held with the forces available. He ordered the evacuation of those willing to leave and retreated with his cavalry. He left the rest. The civilians who couldn't or wouldn't flee, the elderly, the sick, those who believed Rome would protect them, or simply couldn't imagine the scale of what was coming, were left behind. Boudicca's army arrived and burned Londinium to the ground. The layer of ash and burned debris from this destruction is still visible today, deep beneath the streets of modern London when excavations dig deep enough. A red-black band in the soil that archaeologists call the Boudiccan destruction horizon. Then the army moved again to Verulamium, modern St. Albans. The third city fell. The third city burned. 3 Roman cities destroyed in a matter of weeks. The death toll in the 3 cities combined is estimated by Roman sources at around 70,000 people. Rome had a catastrophe on its hands, and a governor who had retreated rather than fight with an army that was somewhere in Wales and badly needed to get back. Chapter 6. The Last Battle. Copy. Suetonius regrouped. He pulled together every Roman soldier he could reach, somewhere between 10 and 15,000 men. He chose his battlefield carefully, a narrow valley or defile with forest behind him and open ground in front that would funnel Boudicca's enormous army into a confined space where numbers counted for less. Boudicca's force arrived, tens of thousands of warriors, and behind them, the families and wagons of the tribes who had come to witness the final defeat of Rome. The wagons were arranged in a great arc behind the army, forming a kind of amphitheater so that everyone could watch the battle. This arrangement, it turned out, would be their undoing. The battle opened with Boudicca riding along her army's front line in her chariot, addressing her warriors one final time. The Romans, trained and disciplined, waited. Then they advanced in tight formation, throwing their javelins in coordinated volleys that tore through the front ranks, then closing immediately to hand-to-hand fighting in the wedge formation Romans trained for constantly. Boudicca's warriors were fierce and brave and vastly outnumbered the Romans, but they were fighting on ground their enemy had chosen, being funneled into a tighter and tighter killing zone, unable to use their numbers effectively in the confined space. The Roman line held. Then it pushed forward. When Boudicca's warriors began to break and retreat, they ran straight into their own wagons, the arc of families and spectators that had come to watch the victory. There was nowhere to run. The battle became a slaughter. Roman sources claim over 80,000 Britons died that day. The numbers may be exaggerated. Roman accounts often were, but all sources agree it was devastating, total, and final.
Chapter 7. The End of Boudicca. Copy what happened to Boudicca after the battle is one of history's unanswered questions. Two Roman accounts give two different endings. Tacitus, writing closer to the events, says she took poison rather than be captured by Rome. Cassius Dio, writing later, says she fell ill after the battle and died of disease. No British sources from the period survive. The Celts recorded their history orally, not in written documents, and the voices of the people who followed her into battle have been almost entirely lost. Her burial site has never been found. Generations of archaeologists and historians have proposed candidates, locations across eastern England where her body might lie, but nothing definitive has ever been confirmed. She simply vanished from history the way she appeared in it, suddenly, completely, leaving only the burning outline of 3 cities and the memory of a moment when the most powerful empire in the ancient world came genuinely close to losing Britain entirely. Rome did not forget her. In the aftermath of the revolt, the Roman approach to governing Britain changed significantly. Governors were more carefully selected. The worst excesses of taxation and land seizure were moderated. The lesson of Boudicca, that pushing people past the point of endurance created consequences that no army could easily contain, had been heard, even if it was heard too late for 70,000 people. Outro copy. Boudicca was nearly erased from history entirely. Roman records mentioned her, because Rome had to explain how 3 of their cities got burned to the ground, but they minimized her, framed her as an anomaly, a temporary embarrassment quickly corrected. It wasn't until the Renaissance that her story began to be recovered, not until the Victorian era, when a statue of her in her chariot was erected near Westminster Bridge in London, that she became the iconic figure she is today. That statue stands a few hundred meters from the Boudiccan destruction horizon buried beneath the London streets, the layer of ash that is the only physical trace remaining of what she did in 60 AD. She had no army when she started. She had a grievance and a voice and a people who had been pushed too far. In less than a year, she raised a force that destroyed 3 cities and brought the Roman Empire to the edge of abandoning one of its most significant provinces. They called her a barbarian. She called herself a queen. History has largely agreed with her. Sleep well. And remember, the most dangerous army in the world is not the one with the best weapons. It's the one that has nothing left to lose. This has been Kingdoms After Dark.